Hi all, I have another fascinating game for you this morning. Leela ID 511 was playing against Komodo 9.02. This game is by David Grosvenor. Leela was on a GTX 1060 graphics card. Komodo, as in Komodo Dragon, was on a 2.8 gigahertz 4 CPU. And the time control is 1 minute per 40 moves. So let's have a look at this game. E4, E6. I have to say, it seems Leela is especially good on the white side of the French defense against, should we call them, traditional chess engines. I've been told off a bit recently calling them brute force chess engines, especially from Stockfish fans. So traditional chess engines, which have a lot of clever techniques, etc. So it's not just your basic brute force. I never really meant that anyway. I mean, I'm aware that a lot of stuff goes in to make these engines very competitive compared to other engines. Otherwise, they'll all be playing the same strength. So anyway, this is a territory, for some reason, where a lot of engines have disasters with black in the French defense. Maybe it's because black is potentially vulnerable on dark squares in particular, and king safety can become a major issue. Here we see black giving up that dark square bishop. This is an unusual variation of the French defense with queen d7, but it has been seen in over-the-board practice quite a lot, though. It is an unusual variation, though, relatively unusual. Knight e7. Now, usually the book move is b6 here. Designed to address queen g4 with the nifty f5 protecting g7. And this kind of position, black is getting what they want. They want to trade off the light square bishops to prove that white is weak on these light squares. And this bishop might not be that effectual. But in this game, we see knight e7. Now, this is a bit of danger territory here after queen g4 black casting, because in this situation, king safety can become quite quickly a major factor. Let's see what happens in this game. Knight f3, and black continues that traditional kind of plan to try and exchange off the light square bishops. Positional intent, but it's met with aggressive king safety intent. h4. We see knight f5. h5. We see h6 here. On bishop a6 to carry on the positional intent. This is actually dangerous, this position already, h6. For example, here, queen f4, and the knight needs to be nudged with g4, and then queen f6 is mega dangerous. For example, like this, just nudging the knight, and that would be a disaster for black on g7. So already black's kind of feeling some concerns. Queen h3 is played. We have queen a4 attacking c2, which seems to be potentially a vulnerable spot that's protected. c5 putting a lot of pressure on d4. But now this knight's kicked, and instead of moving the knight, Komodo 9 decided to play c4. If the knight's moved, this is really, really dangerous. You can see that both bishops are pointing in the right direction against the king, and there's also this rook waiting in the wings for this g file to open up. This is basically what we can call a visually crushing position. But quite often when we play against chess engines, we can't prove a thing because engines are so absolutely resourceful. But Leela here is playing white, and she can cope quite often with the resourcefulness and prove that this seemingly visually crushing position can be really dangerous concretely. But this is a continuation here, for example, which shows that it's possible to get to the black king. Queen g5 for queen h6, for example, to stop any rook g8. So, and then this one threatens actually to make it mate queen h6, controlling that whole g file, for example, like this. So this is already clearly a very dangerous situation if the knight retreats. It's fairly terminal, it seems, after g5. I mean, if you just look at this, it's visually crushing. So we see c4, which isn't ideal, because we get a lot of the same properties now. This g file, the bishop's still pointing at the king. Nothing's really fundamentally changed. Well, except one thing. This light square bishop is taken out of the equation. So guess what Leela plays here? if I give you 5 seconds to pause the video. Okay. Bishop takes h6. It's such a strong position that even f6 as well. I mean, there's multiple ways of playing this with a big advantage. This is strong as well. Threatening mate. This is just devastation. Threatening. Do you see the nice little threat here? If black doesn't play something desperately, black gets it with rook takes g7 check and queen h6. So the position is incredibly strong by this stage in any case. Queen takes c2 was played. We have bishop d2, because actually there is a threat of mate. That's one of the implementation issues us as humans would fall for probably when playing against an engine. So even though we have visually crushing positions, like 1/10 of them end up, we manage to save a draw or something. But here no, bishop d2, stopping mate. E takes f5. And now how to plow on here. h6 is played. g6. And now queen h4 with the juicy idea of queen f6. So logically that's parried. And here, it's quite easy, us as humans I think, to falter here. But Leela has a very specific idea which breaks the camel's back in this position, which is queen e7. So the rooks are not connected at the moment. So the queen's difficult to evict, and there's a potential threat if the knight ever moved of h7, because the rook could be loose. It's only protected by the king here. Now black played a very desperate move, bishop a6. Looks very desperate. If we look at this position, why bishop a6? Well, if queen a4, the crunch comes with e6. The fawn pawn is ready there. thorn, fawn. Okay. Let's see. Knight b8. We have h7 check, and here h8 is crushing because queen takes f7 is checkmate there. That shows some of the dangers of this queen e7 e6 plan. So this is like an attacking manual. Well, an instructive manual rather for the attacking player. That's why I kind of like this game. So queen a4 falters, queen b2, we just move the rook first, and then still e6. There's nothing that really black can do in this position. F takes queen g7. What does black actually do here? If moving the bishop here, we just take on d7. There's no problem with the king in the center here. The pawn controls e8. So here, even with the king in the center, just knight g5 is crushing. Here, h7, h8. This is just distracting the rook from f7 is checkmate. So it's a pretty dire position because of this e6 and this fawn pawn. So sometimes, I mean, Leela's teaching us sometimes it's worth apparently keeping the position closed to get this fawn pawn, because of you can open up the position horizontally, and she's shown that in another game with the 8th rank in another game example where the fawn pawn was in conjunction with the 8th rank. Here it's in conjunction with the 7th rank. It's just so dangerous, this position. So bishop a6, Leela takes that knight, queen b2, and now white just castles, protecting the rook with elegance on a1. Rook a e8, and the game was actually ended here, adjudicated. To continue this, queen d6 is amazingly strong in this position. The problem is here that queen f6, you might think it can be parried. I mean, if it's not parried, clearly this is mating, right? On g7 with the fawn pawn. But if it's parried with rook e6, can you see a slight snag to this, which does involve the fawn pawn? If I give you 5 seconds, there's a slight snag here. A little detail to consider is h7 check. They're trying to distract the poor king away from that rook, clinging onto the rook. And here, bang, queen takes f8, wins more material. So it's absolutely crushing position, and the attack would like rage on as well. and it just rages and rages on. It's absolutely winning. So yeah, I thought this was a sweet little French defense game, which is maybe just an iconic example that a lot of the traditional engines, if they're not given enough French defense theory and end up castling kingside, can be really smashed to bits. And that actually applies even with traditional engines against traditional engines. The French defense is very dangerous territory, in fact. I think Tal once said he didn't play the French defense because it required too much accuracy. I think he was aware that sometimes you've got to really know what you're doing. A lot of the top, most successful French defense players throughout history, in my view, like Tigran Petrosian, used to castle queenside, probably with good reason, or Botvinnik. They ended up castling queenside in a lot of game examples. Castling kingside often against this very aggressive pawn chain in the centre, where the white rook hasn't been committed, white hasn't peacefully castled. It's asking for trouble, as this game shows. Okay, hope you got something from it. Comments, questions, likes, shares appreciated. Thanks very much.